everything around you has kind of come to be? What position do you hold? And what evidence do you find compelling? And what's your position so far? How would you describe it?
So I'm an atheist. Not an atheist in the sense that I'm sure that there is no God, but an atheist in that I'm not convinced by the arguments that there is one. From my understanding of the world around me, the arguments for God's existence don't really hold up. I think that we'll probably go from there. In terms of this conversation I had with some of your colleagues earlier, in terms of objective and subjective morality, I don't believe that there is any objective morality. We only have subjective morality. It's not that I'm particularly happy about this, that there is no defined right or wrong. I just think we've got to do the best that we've got with the world that we're in. I don't think there's any objective purpose, no objective right or wrong. We just happen to find ourselves here, play the cards that we best we can to do the best that we can, basically.
Why have you opted to be, say, an atheist as opposed to an agnostic?
An agnostic, well, I think an agnostic is a position on knowledge. I probably would be described as an agnostic on a position of knowledge. I don't believe that we ever can know whether or not God exists. Because you could invent a God, you could say maybe a God exists that can't be perceived by man or discovered by man in any way. So you couldn't say whether or not that God exists. That's a position on knowledge rather than being unsure whether God or God exists. Again, I'm not sure that God doesn't exist. I'm just not convinced by the argument that any God does.
I would have thought atheism is a position of knowledge and agnosticism is a position of saying I don't know.
No, because a Gnostic is someone who believes, I guess a Gnostic will be someone who believes that you can know either way. And I don't believe that we can know either way. An atheist is someone who doesn't think a God exists, as far as I understand it.
Do you believe that...
Sorry, although a lot of screaming. Yes.
Do you believe that there could be evidence that hasn't reached you?
Yes.
Or possibly has reached you, but you've misunderstood it? Or
absolutely, yes. I don't believe that I've got, I know all the answers by any means. I think the amount of knowledge that we could potentially have compared to the knowledge that we do is very large. So, absolutely willing to be convinced. And that's an interesting thing as well, because as I said, we're here for antinatalist activism. Yeah. So antinatalism is the belief that we shouldn't be bringing new beings into existence, new sentient beings. And I think especially under Islam, you have a really compelling reason not to create new beings, not to have children in particular. It's because if you bring a child into existence, you risk that child burning in a lake of fire forever if they choose not to be a Muslim, or I guess not choose, if they're not a Muslim at the point that they die, as an adult, of course. And I think that is a very good reason not to have children. Because if I have a kid, as I said, there's a chance they would burn in hell.
Nice plug, by the way.
No, thank you. Obviously,
Yeah, I know. I know you got to do your thing.
The channel too.
And that's fine. And we can possibly speak on that if we get a chance as well. So, but the whole, obviously, argument is predicated on the beginning, and I think.
I don't think so, because the antinatalist argument in particular, again, I would say the arguments for not having children as a theist, or at least as a Muslim or a Christian that believes in hell, they are stronger than any argument that I can say as an atheist.
When you're talking about children, that presupposes a conceiving being, a person, an existence. So when you're talking about a being in an existence, the primary question to that being in existence is, how did I get here? Who am I? What am I doing here? So I get...
Hang on, I think they're all very different questions. So how did I get here would be like a material one. Like what am I doing here? Do you mean like in terms of purpose? Or
yeah, so you've got purpose. Like what am I doing here?
Yes.
How did I get here? How did everything else get here?
Yes.
These sorts of questions I would say are more fundamental than say questioning or discussing about should we bring a child in or not? Because a child is, like I said, it presupposes a person that's obviously going to conceive that child in the first place.
I would personally disagree.
So that's why I think
for the purpose of this conversation, it's better to say that from your worldview, should you have children? From my worldview, should I have children? Because I think in both, I said, if anything, as a Muslim, you have more strong reasons not to have children, so that your kid doesn't burn forever in hell.
I would disagree.
I will say that one thing, I did have a conversation, I think the channel is called Dawah. There's some blokes over there, there are a couple of blokes, it was like three months or so ago. And we talked a lot about where the universe begins, the beginning of the universe, and it kept going around in the same circle, where I would say that I'm not willing to make any, because they'll say, don't you believe that the universe has to have come around in this way, or do you think that this is impossible and this kind of thing? And I'm not confident to make any claims about the beginning of the universe or any claims of anything that happens outside of our universe, because all of my entire understanding of reality, what is or isn't possible, is based upon the things that happen within the universe, if that makes sense. So I see no reason to be confident in claims about what can happen outside of it. What happens before the Big Bang, for example, what caused the Big Bang, I don't know, because that's all stuff outside of our universe, and everything, all of my entire understanding of reality is based within it.
But what you can do is you can make an inference to the best explanation.
But that inference is based upon our understanding
of
things within this universe.
Of course it is.
So my question to you would be, why should any of the rules, any of the logic that happens within this universe necessarily apply outside of it?
We'll get to that. These are all very good questions. So you said, I mean, that's going to be one of the questions. The other question is Islam, you're saying, strengthens the fact that you shouldn't have kids.
Yes.
We'll get to that. But initially speaking, if I was to ask you, out of these options, or you could tell me if there's another option that you think as well, about how the universe came into existence, would you say either it came from nothing, it created itself, or it was created by something or someone?
I mean, the thing is, there could be they could all be options. There could be a whole raft of options that we can't conceive of, because again, I'm really not confident making any kind of material claims outside of the universe. Everything that I understand about existence, about the way that it works, the laws of logic, the laws of physics, etc., everything that we observe is based upon what happens inside this universe. So I don't feel confident to make any claims about what happened before, what caused the universe to come around, anything like that. And that's what we went down with the path with the EF Dawah for like an hour. They were saying, oh, of course, don't you think that this is impossible? And I say, well, I don't know, because I don't feel, for me it feels a bit like, to use an analogy, if you have two fish underwater, they're used to everything being underwater, them claiming that everything outside of the pond is also underwater because everything within their pond is. So me saying that because the world exists like this within, abides by these rules within the universe, therefore by some logical reason, things outside of our universe can or can't happen. I don't think that's a logical claim to make at all. It feels like the two fish in the pond making claims of what goes on outside of the pond based upon what happens inside of it.
Yeah, but those two fish in the pond have very little understanding of what's outside the pond.
I think we have very little understanding of what's outside the universe.
We have more understanding than those two fish in the bowl, because
how do you know that?
Yeah, because of, for example, our powers of observation. We've got telescopes, so we can actually peer outside.
But we're peering, that's like the fish looking further into the pond. We are peering further into the universe. That doesn't tell us anything about what happened outside of it.
Yeah, but I mean, just sticking with the analogy of the pond, a fish would never leave that pond, because for your analogy to work, the fish stay in the pond. They can't see what's outside the pond.
Will we ever leave our universe?
Well, we've left our planet, we've gone to the moon.
But that's like a fish going from one part of the pond to the other. That's not leaving the pond.
So your analogy of the pond is the universe, yeah?
Yes, so the fish live within the pond, like we live within the universe. And if the fish said that therefore everything outside of the pond must also be out underwater, because everything is underwater in the pond, I think that would be a daft argument.
Do you believe in the Big Bang?
I do believe in it. From my understanding, I did like A-level physics 11 years ago, and from my understanding, the Big Bang is it certainly was the best explanation at the time, as it was taught to me in my physics class. Yes.
Is it something that you adopt as like your part of your worldview?
It's a part of my worldview. Not necessarily a huge part of my worldview, because I tend to, especially when I'm thinking about moral issues, which we're talking about here, like the morals of procreation. Also, an important point for antinatalism is around eating animals, because if you, by not being vegan, by eating meat, for example, we're bringing all these beings into existence. We're paying for them to be bred into existence, to then suffer and die. We think that's very wrong as antinatalists. And I tend to make those kind of moral arguments based upon the worldview of the person I'm saying. Based upon my worldview, I wouldn't necessarily say a Big Bang is a huge part of it, in the sense of, if they came up with another explanation for the universe, I'd be like, yeah, sure, fine. I don't necessarily think it's particularly important. I'd say the lack of a God existing.
Do you believe you exist?
Do I believe I exist?
Yeah.
Yes, based upon my understanding. I'm not sure that I exist, but based upon my subjective understanding of the objective reality of whether or not I exist, I do think I exist. It could all be a big simulation. I could be even mistaken about that.
Then if shouldn't your first point of call be to make sure that you exist?
I don't know how much I can, you say, to make sure I exist. I'm not sure what kind of proof would I need.
You can answer that.
Well, that's true. Like, again, I'm pretty sure that I exist. I think I exist as much as anything else.
What's the little bit of doubt that's left?
That I could be deluded. I mean, we could all be massively deluded. We could all be in the Matrix. Like, we think we're at Speaker's Corner, and really we're plugged in somewhere. Maybe you're plugged in somewhere, and I don't exist. I'm like a video game character. Like, there are those kind of things, and I don't know how we would know whether or not that's the case. So I presume it's not. I haven't seen any argument that it is, but again, I'm not going to say 100% that it's definitely not the case.
So you're saying you've adopted the inference to the best explanation?
The best explanation that I can have, yes.
Based on inference, yeah?
Yes.
You've inferred. Okay, fantastic. So if we take that line of thinking, and again, your name's John, yeah?
Yes.
So John, again, I'm not here to convert you.
Sure.
As I'm sure you're not here to convert me either. You've spoken to the Dawah guys. We'll have a conversation as well, and we'll try different angles. But again, what I'm not asking from you is to tell me things that are stuck in stone. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to change your position or whatnot. But all I ask is you just give me just honest answers that you genuinely believe.
Sure.
Because sometimes when some people come, they try to. It's like the whole, you know what? Most likely I don't exist. Now stuff like that, the guy obviously doesn't believe that.
Yes.
If he genuinely believed that, he wouldn't be here.
Yes.
He'd be doing some madness. And you know what I'm saying? Police officer says, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Oh, I don't exist, so it doesn't really matter."
Yeah.
So I don't even really need to answer your questions. You'll be on the news, and you'll be put in a mental institute. So, bearing what little understanding that we have, we just scaffold that so far. So there is existence.
As far as we're aware, yeah.
And philosophers have classified that into three: contingent existence, which is a dependent existence.
Yes.
A necessary existence.
Yeah.
And impossible existence.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will just on this point.
Sure.
I think, and with it, we did this in my physics class. We traced back to not quite the Big Bang, but very shortly afterwards, like a fraction of a second afterwards, and then traced forward from there. So from a fraction of a second afterwards, we think this happened, and then from this many years, this happened, and then, so on, and took us to up until our present day. And everything in that had a cause and effect, like a domino knocking, for example. So this happened, gravity working in this way. Again, we're going to butcher the physics, so I'm not going to try and explain it. But they tried cause and effect about how the galaxy was formed, etc. And then we ended up, I think they said about 11 or 13 billion years after the Big Bang, we ended up where we are today. So this is the best explanation that we have. And all of that had cause and effect. But then the thing that I don't buy is when that's all within our universe, as we agree. I think I don't buy is when someone says to me, particularly a religious person says, therefore that cause and effect must have continued before the universe. And I say, well, no, because we need cause and effect according to the laws that govern our universe. I don't see why what happened before then, even if there was a before then, has to abide by the laws that we have here, if that makes sense. So that's where I'm fearing the conversation is going to go, because I'm just going to come back saying I don't know why the laws that govern our universe have to apply outside of it.
And that's fine, because that's cause and effect. My argument is somewhat similar, but it's an argument of dependency. Yeah, which I think it's going to be very similar to what you've heard.
Yeah.
But just to kind of reiterate it, I'll just summarize it very shortly, just for the viewers as well, which is that we are a dependent existence. We depend on something else that depends on something else.
Yes.
And logically speaking, there cannot be an infinite regress of dependent things. There has to be a logical, rational end to that chain.
And we have that within the Big Bang theory. Well, we don't necessarily, when our universe started. Now, we don't necessarily know that there was nothing before.
This actually undercuts the Big Bang theory.
How so?
This is a philosophical argument.
Yeah.
That's more like the Big Bang. The Big Bang is a mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah. It doesn't talk about agency.
Yes.
So, and that's fine. I mean, talking about how things work is fine, but we're talking about why why is it
Yes.
this? So that's why this argument undercuts that. It's more philosophical, contingency-based argument. So when you look at us, we're dependent on something else, that's dependent on something
Yes.
else, and it goes on ad infinitum.
Yeah.
There's two options here.
Yeah.
Either you're conceding that it can go on for infinity,
Yeah.
or you're saying logically, rationally, philosophically, there has to be an end to that chain.
So what I'll say is this: we do have a beginning point from the universe as far as we understand it, and that's the Big Bang. Again, as I said before, I'm not going to confidently say that the claim that the contingency, like the dominoes had to keep going back before the Big Bang, because as I said before, I'm really not confident to make any claims.
No problem,
outside
because look, John,
before then.
even in terms of confidence, so you said confidently, I can't even say I exist. So
no, confidently I can say I exist. I can't say 100% confidently.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. 100%. I'm not asking for anything 100%.
Yes.
What we're saying is we're just using inference. We're using rationality, and we're saying, you know what makes the most sense to me.
Okay, but what makes sense to you? I hope you'll agree.
No, sorry, I didn't mean me.
Oh,
I
sorry,
meant
yes,
you.
sorry,
Yeah,
to me,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
What makes sense to me is based upon my understanding that's based within this universe. In the same way that in the fish in the pond, their understanding of reality is based upon their life in the pond.
Okay, I got you.
That doesn't mean, therefore, that any of the conditions within the pond, such as being underwater, therefore apply outside of the pond. Like we know, for example, in the pond example, that there is a world that isn't underwater. It's not all underwater. Similarly, I don't know, I'm not going to confidently say that the laws that govern this universe, such as cause and effect, that necessarily applies outside of the universe, because all of my understandings are based upon what happens here.
Okay, no problem. But again, this universe, let's just say we put it all in one blob.
Yeah.
Yeah? All of it we put in one blob.
Yeah.
Now that blob, dependent or independent?
What do you mean?
Is it dependent on something? So philosophically, dependency and independency, I'm just going to quickly define it. Dependency implies that something can cease to exist.
Yeah.
It's composed of parts, and it can be any other way.
Yeah.
Something that's independent is the opposite of that,
Yes.
i.e. it's not composed of parts,
Yeah.
can't be any other way, and can't cease to exist.
So can the universe in total cease to exist?
So
I don't know.
So is the universe in totality, is it dependent or independent based on the definition? And I'm more than welcome to repeat it.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't feel confident making claims about the universe as a whole, especially from the outside, from an external observer of the universe.
Let me continue a bit further and let me know what you think. So the universe itself, if I took the universe, for example, something could be placed in one way. It could be like instead of red, it could be blue, or instead of big, it could be small. And the things inside the universe, they are ceasing to exist. Like people are dying, stars are exploding, and then there's supernovas, etc., etc. And then this comes into existence.
In the scientific sense, though, with a supernova or with people dying, there isn't really any creation or destruction, really.
You're
it's
saying
just
there's
matter is
energy.
just changing. Yes, matter is just changing. So the stuff that makes me now, when I die, will be turned into something else.
Right. Yeah, so, but still, the fact that you can have something big as opposed to small, that things can be any other way, the parts can be reorganized, things can cease to exist. As I was speaking to your colleague, she said that, look, if we cease to have kids, then we will cease to exist as humanity.
What we conceive of, the human race, what we think of as the human race will cease to exist. But the stuff that makes up the human race, the atoms that make up the human race, will continue in some other form. Maybe we'll be eaten by animals or turn into plants or something like that, you know?
Turn into a lobster.
Yeah, there's the idea that we are all made up of the stuff from stars, from supernovas, for example.
Yeah. So you believe that the blob of the universe, does it fall independent or independent?
Well, can the universe cease to exist? I generally don't know. I don't feel very confident making claims about the universe as a whole.
Because if you believe in the Big Bang, then you also probably heard of the Big Crunch as well.
That's one theory, where everything expands and then crunches together. Yes. Yes, that theory.
Is that something that you subscribe to?
I don't know. I honestly, I remember we looked at we were looking at different options in physics. There was the big crunch, There was the big expansion, it just keeps expanding forever.
Yeah.
Then there was like a slowing down where it slows down the expansion but never fully stops. I don't know on any of them, to be honest.
So
I don't think it's a big part.
So John, when we look at the universe, even if we see it as a blob, that the question is, how did that blob come to be? Did it come from nothing? Did it create itself?
Yeah.
Or was there something behind it?
I don't know. As I said before, I'm not going to make any claims about what happened outside of the universe.
I'm not asking you to. I'm saying, what's the inference to the best explanation?
But it is outside of the universe, because according to you, whatever created our universe has to have been outside of it, right? So for me to make claims about what did or didn't create the universe, or even if there is an outside of the universe, I have to step outside the universe to make it. I have to make a claim outside of it. A bit like a fish making a claim outside the pond, and I'm just not going to do that.
But even a fish can make certain claims based upon even the pond itself, isn't it?
Yes, they could say that because of our experience within the pond, everything is underwater. Like, we know that things move in this speed or whatever because everything's underwater.
Even fish can see that there is such thing as no water as well, because they can see above them.
Well, yes, in this, if you have a fish that can look outside of the universe, we humans can't look outside of our universe.
No, okay, so but the fish itself, they can see that there's such thing as non-water as well.
Yes.
That we have a form of breathing. We need sustenance. And
okay, so in this example, the fish knows
yeah.
that the pond isn't the whole world.
How do you want to keep it? We can keep it as the world of the universe.
In my example, I was saying about two fish in a pond who thought that the pond was everything, if that makes sense.
Okay.
A bit like with us, with the universe. Now, again, there could be stuff outside of the universe. I'm just not going to make any claims. And I do worry that the conversation's going to kind of die as it did with E.F. Dawah, because I'm just going to say, look, I'm really not going to make any claims on it, because every claim I make about what could and couldn't be true, what is or isn't possible, is based on my understanding of reality, which is based upon this universe, which started however many years ago. So I'm not going to make any claims about what reality is like outside of the universe, if there is a reality outside of the universe.
Then what do you concede, or what's your kind of final kind of resting point?
I don't know. That's my resting point. When people ask me, did the universe come into existence this way? Did the universe come into existence that way? Are there many universes? Are we the only one? I just come with.
So this is interesting then. So when you say I don't know,
yes,
and then you say I'm an atheist,
yes,
that the atheist position is that there is no God.
Well,
so then surely you should...
I believe that there is no God.
Yeah.
In the same way that I don't know for sure that my parents are my parents. They could have adopted me and not told me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I would never claim that I 100% know that my parents are my parents.
Yeah.
And even if I got a DNA test, you could say, oh, well, someone swapped the DNA of the hospital. But you can invent a story.
But surely you can say, based upon my experience, you can say, look, based upon my limited experience, my experience in London, my experience with people, maybe there are people giving birth to rhinoceroses and this and that, and which is fine. But
technically possible, but it seems pretty unlikely based on everything I've done so far.
Yeah. So I mean, we can come up with these kind of absurdities, and fair enough. But what we can say is, look, I can see, logically speaking, that seeing with my experience things that contain information in a great deal of in a large amount. In my experience, there is a creator.
Yes, in the same way that a fish could say, logically, in my experience, everything is surrounded by water. We're all underwater. We know that's not true, but the fish is like, from my experience in the pond, everything outside of the pond is also underwater. And we would know that's not true. The same way that we would say that everything within our universe abides by certain rules of logic or physics or whatever, and therefore it applies outside.
So John, this is interesting then.
I just don't know why you feel so confident making a claim about what the universe is like outside of our...
I'll tell you why, because when we're talking about logic and reasoning, a person, I would argue that the person is illogical if they believe, and their position is a bit kind of absurd, because what they're saying is, I'm saying that it's the logic and rationality can work outside. Like, we can extrapolate this further.
Yes, in the same way that fish can extrapolate that everything's underwater.
No.
Everything is underwater in the pond.
No, not necessarily, because what the other person or the other position would be that, you know what, the laws that govern our universe are illogical and irrational.
Not that they are, I mean, I don't think they're illogical or rational.
Because that's the only, either they're logical and rational, or if a person says, look, logic and rationality may not necessarily govern our universe, so that leaves the only other option, which is irrationality of...
Not necessarily. Or you just say that the way things are within the pond, like with the fish, they're not necessarily that way outside of the pond.
I'll give you an example.
In the same way that the laws that govern our universe here, they might not necessarily be the case outside of our universe.
Like a squared circle.
Yes.
Yeah? That's a contradiction in terms, isn't it?
Yes, definitely within our universe,
Yeah.
a squared circle is an impossibility.
Do you believe that a squared circle could exist outside the universe?
I'm not going to make any claims for what can and can't exist outside of our universe, because all of my understandings are based upon what happens inside of it.
So based upon your understanding of what's inside, would you say that illogical, irrational things can exist outside?
Well, I don't know, because again, we don't know the rules. Like, it'd be like saying, based upon our understanding of everything being underwater, is it possible that things are not underwater outside of the pond if we're with the two fish? I do worry that we are going in circles here. Like I say, I'm just not going to make claims about what happens outside of the universe. What we can do is we can have a chat, if you would like, about starting, within the universe, within our universe, and go from there. And then in particular, interesting to talk about like antinatalism and creating new beings.
So I guess like within the universe as well, when you see something like a dictionary,
yes,
that has a lot of information in there.
Yes.
Yeah, and from our experience, we see something that has a great deal of information implies a creator or a designer or a writer of sorts.
Yes.
Can you give me an example of something that has a great deal of information that has no designer whatsoever?
Well, it depends what you mean by information, because I don't think that human beings were designed.
Information could be in terms... you mentioned human beings like DNA.
Well, I don't think some people might think of that as information, but I don't know if it necessarily is information. There's a lot of well, it depends how you define it.
Information in terms of...
Joseph is Jesus' father.
Not now, mate.
Joseph is Jesus' father.
Come on, mate. We're having a nice chat. Please respect
Joseph is Jesus' father.
Please respect us.
Jesus' stepfather.
I don't
Jesus
believe
slaughtered people.
I'm an atheist. I don't believe in Christianity. You're wasting your time here, bro.
You have no knowledge.
Okay.
I have knowledge from Allah.
John.
Okay.
Allah revealed to me.
Well, enjoy your whoreries.
John.
Allah revealed to me.
I don't think he's well.
Right.
You're a liar. I am Messiah.
There's another Islamic belief that he's the
Jesus'
Messiah.
father.
I don't think he's well.
Jacob is Jesus'
Have a good
father.
Have a good day, sir. Have a good day.
Okay, so...
A few slices short of the loaf, I think it is.
Yeah. What can you say? So, when it comes to DNA, like you've got certain stem cells.
Yeah.
They have information, and that information. When I say information, I'm just giving you an analogy that it can be used to create an organ. It's got enough data. I mean, a crude simplification would be data.
Yes.
It's got data that can be used to create something, form something. Not too good with definitions, but
you can.
Yeah.
Sorry, just go back. Like, I know where this is going to go. It's going to go to like why humans create, because they're very complex. And like, if you saw a brick wall, a human cell is much more complex than a brick wall. I think, again, like with the atheist worldview, you can track all the way back to the Big Bang and like the evolution of the first cell, for example, and then when a single cell organism became a multi-celled organism, you can track back over a very long period of time and look back to how we did end up the way we are. Now, again, it's very, very complex. I wouldn't say it's in any way intelligently designed. Again, something that comes back to the antinatalist point. We're designed in a way so that we will grow old and die. We're designed in a way that we need water to survive. There are many